Hello, Croeso. Welcome. Here's another Welsh story. This one is from this book, 1936 school book. So this is what used to go to schools back then, and it's written by H.T. Evans. And this is a story I didn't know too well before I read this. It's chapter 17. It's called A Welsh Minstrel. After the failure of Owain Glyndwr's rising, the English Parliament was very cruel to Wales. It passed many severe laws which made the lot of the Welsh people much worse than it had ever been before. They were not allowed to carry arms, even bows and arrows were forbidden, and this was a serious matter to the Welshmen of those days. They were not permitted to own land near a town or to become citizens in a town. If a Welshman broke the law, he was tried by a jury of Englishmen. These were only a few of the unfair ways in which the Welsh people were treated by the English. They did not lose heart. They were naturally light-hearted and gay, though somewhat ready to quarrel amongst themselves. Some things haven't changed. None did more to keep up their spirits than the minstrels or bards who travelled through the country in those days, singing and reciting the poems which they composed. These minstrels were given places of honour by the households of the Welsh gentry. Owain Glyndwr, of course, had his own minstrel, Iolo Goch, or Red Iolo. We owe a great deal to Iolo, for his poems tell us many interesting things about Glyndwr, which we should not otherwise have known. He tells us that Owain's house had a moat around it, with a bridge leading to the gateway. Standing on a green hillock, it was built of timber, with its upper rooms resting on stout pillars. The roof was tiled, and it had chimneys to carry off the smoke. The wardrobes were filled with rich material and clothing of all kinds. Outside the main building was a mill, with a pigeon cot, a fish pond, rabbit burrows, and a nesting place for herons. There was always plenty to eat and drink, and neither lock nor latch nor porter to prevent visitors from entering the house to share in the good things so well provided. We may be certain that none was more welcome than the minstrel, and that none enjoyed his visit more. In return for this entertainment, the minstrel sang the praises of his lord and host. There is always someone present, either one of the family or perhaps the minstrel himself, to accompany the singer on the harp. In time of war, the minstrel had a special duty to perform. This was particularly so during Owain Glyndwr's wars, for whenever they went, the minstrels roused the people to anger with full accounts of their countrymen's sufferings. In this way, they were able to persuade the Welsh gentry to take up arms and lead the peasants to battle. These native minstrels were themselves enraged by the harsh laws passed by the English Parliament against the Welsh people, and by the cruelty of some of the English officials who were sent to enforce these laws. They would have driven every Englishman out of Wales if they had the power. So great was the power of the Welsh minstrel and bards that the Parliament at Westminster passed a law which made it unlawful for them to travel around the country, and it also forbade the Welsh people to meet together, even though it was for the purpose of help at harvest time. Generally speaking, the minstrels did not write very good poetry, but their poems contain many facts about the ancient history of Wales, which otherwise would not be known. In the 15th century, the War of the Roses was fought in England. It was a struggle between the House of York and the House of Lancaster. Many of the Welsh gentry took part in these battles. On their return home, they told their minstrels of the great deeds of courage they had performed, or of what they had seen. The minstrels wrote poems about these fierce combats, and these verses can be seen and read by us today. In short, the minstrels were the news reporters of those early days. They tell us what they saw and heard, and from these poetic accounts we can picture the manner in which Welshmen lived 500 years ago, and have some idea of their thoughts and feelings. It is hard for us to understand what a visit from a minstrel meant in those early days. People in the distant parts of Wales would have known nothing of the events that took place along the English border, apart from the minstrels' visits. The newspaper and the wireless are today, the wireless, found in every hamlet and village, so that men and women are able to keep in touch with the great world outside and have no need to depend upon travelling singers. I guess they hadn't really thought about the internet back in these days. I don't know where most people get their news from now. I guess it's television, internet, and all sorts of sources. But in those days, it's very much up to the minstrel to come and bring the news and pass messages, which is probably the main reason, in fact it would be the reason, why the English Parliament made them illegal. Not because of their bad singing or poor poetry as mentioned, but because this was the news service. And this would be how messages would be spread around and news gathered and the people informed. So there you go. Till the next time, there'll be more stories from Welsh history. See you then. Heddwch.